Hi, and welcome to Now Chat Shows. Your girl Kaz Mack in the building, alongside this Empress right next to me. Wagwan.
It's tea in the house. Sorry, I'm a bit croaky. I've been taking in the sun. I've been a bit.
So you've been sunbathing, yeah? That's why you look like brown skin girl.
Woo! I feel good though.
Always look like brown skin girl because we are brown skin girl, and we have an amazing show lined up for you all today. Thank you for joining us. You could be anywhere, but you are here with us at 9 p.m. on Now Chat Show, a platform to inspire. We have an amazing show lined up for you today. But before we get started, how's your week been so far, Miss T?
Oh, my week has been really cool. Nothing too excitable. Everything's just been calm, nice. Nothing to complain about. I'm grateful, yeah.
We give thanks, yeah? Yep. But last week, Saturday, we had the pleasure of being down at the Sound Bank first year anniversary. This is a creative space for creatives. It's like the creative mecca of the United Kingdom. I'm trying to make it sound all bossy and thing, but you know what? We was there. There was so many. It was. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that. It was really an amazing time. It was 2 days workshops. It was a space for creatives, musicians, and it was a digital space where, you know, basically they had workshops there. They had us giving a podcast, sharing the journey of a creative. If you haven't seen it, please, guys, make sure you go over to our previous video, which we did on Saturday, which was live. So big up to Merid Studios as well. Big up yourself, Jermaine, if you're watching, because you said you'd be watching. If you're not watching right now, you catch a replay. But then guys did an amazing job. And big up to Janelle, Queen as well. It was just absolutely phenomenal. And yes, most importantly, big up to Mel's as well. Big up to the actual founder of the organization. She done an amazing job for first year, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So guys, make sure you are following the Sound Bank. You can go onto the Instagram. It's the Sound Bank. Look, I kept on saying sound. What did I keep on saying? Sound band. And it was like, Kaz, I always get it twisted. Guys, pray for me that one day my memory will be because I make up things, I give people new names and things like that because I just cannot remember how to pronounce people's names. It's not a good excuse, but I'm working on it. And last week's show was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it, T?
It was amazing. The information, the levels.
And what was last week's show? Last week's show was about
fibroids.
Yeah.
About fibroids. We had some beautiful queens on that were telling their stories. Denise. Help me out.
And we had Dawn Hills. Pick up yourself, Iola. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, sis.
We had Dawn Hills, Naomi Gray as well. And then we had Dr. Amsu
and Mr. Briggs.
Yeah, so guys, do check out that episode. It is a long one. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was long for us. Can you imagine? We was actually moderating and doing the show. It was a 3-hour show, but it's 3 hours of information. If you didn't know about fibroids, you're definitely going to know about fibroids for sure, and they have a solution. So do check them out. We are planning to having them both on the show again in the near future because they not only just deal with fibroids, but they also deal with like prostate cancer, diabetes, all of the areas that we're all challenged with, really.
High blood pressure, all the areas that we're challenged with, basically.
Yeah. So the time is now 9:05. So we are going to go straight into the episode. But before we do so, we are going to go for a few minutes break, say 5 minutes break. So don't go anywhere, and we'll see you after this.
I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. I have studied your history for so long, and compared to my history, your history's just wrong. Every book, every gallery, every museum, pure battle, pure war, pure guns, pure bomb. There's nothing in your history that says creation. Everything in your history, it says destruction. Everywhere that you go, I just war. You depend is like, without evil you can't function. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. In a short space of time, you kill enough million. Menticide, genocide, pure annihilation. Population control is just a part of your plan. And some examples I have will prove that you are demon. Like what? World War II and World War I. In a World War II, you drop two nuclear bomb. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, where they in Japan. Them strike alone, you murder about 500,000. And what about the enslavement of the African? From then until now, a pure separation. Where eyes them open, we see your dirty plan, and we don't need no glasses. A 2020 vision. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. You want to decrease the population control, your number one mission. You are minority, and that's without question. That's why you don't think twice when you take out a nation. Look what you do to the original Australian, and look what you do to the original Tasmanian. Look what you do to the Native American, and look what you do to the so-called Caribbean. They scramble for Africa, Lord, what a bam bam. And ever since then, colonization. And ever since then, war and destruction. And ever since then, have your corruption. And then you brainwash with your education. And decimate with your vaccination. And sterilize with your contraception. And genocide with your starvation. No, we cannot unite up your separation. You divide and rule with the tribalism. This is my wake-up call to all African. Minister Farrakhan said, now is the time and what must be done. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. I have studied your history for so long, and compared to my history, your history's just wrong. Every book, every gallery, every museum, pure battle, pure war, pure guns, pure bomb. There's nothing in your history that says creation. Everything in your history, it says destruction. Everywhere that you go, I just war. You depend is like, without evil you can't function. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. 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 Mr. Wicked Man.
Wow. Culture mark are going mad today, this evening on the 10th of August. Well, let's just go straight into the conversation, guys. Today is about post-traumatic slave syndrome part 2. If you didn't see the first episode, don't worry, we've got your back. You can always catch the replay. And some of you asked us that we needed to go more into some of the areas that Brittany Words actually talked about. So I think it just makes sense we just bring in our guests. We have Culture Mark, who's a co-founder of Black History Studies. We have Sandra I'm going to let Sandra pronounce her surname. Sandra, I can't pronounce your surname, babe, so you're going to have to do that for me. Sorry, I don't want to make a mess of it. She's a registered practitioner psychologist, and Sandra is a trauma specialist working as an expert witness and offering assessment and treatment services to emergency services and humanitarian services. Then we have Akua. Yes, guys, we have Akua, who is a she is the founder of the African Spiritual Practices, and she's also a fashion designer. So she will be also coming in. And of course, we have Brittany Works, who's going to be joining us all the way from Atlanta. So let's bring everybody in.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, how is everyone?
Full house.
Hey.
How is everybody doing?
Good.
Hot.
Hot.
Yeah.
Listen, let's not complain about hot, because we, as melanin people, we need vitamin D.
Yep.
Don't we? Yeah.
Yeah, the UK is on fire right now.
Okay. All right. So before we get started, I just want to find out from you all, how is everyone doing? Apart from the heat itself, is everybody okay?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm good. The heat's good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so Mark, we played your track just now. If you can just expand on it, because mate, that song, I was like a bit like, boy, should I play it? Some people might get offended until you get me. So if you could just elaborate, where did the concept come from? I mean, I know you're the founder of Black History Studies, but mate, you just gave us a Black History Study in like 4 minutes, 23 seconds.
That was the idea of the song. It came about during lockdown. When was it? It was about October 2020. We did the video in my front room. So Charmaine, my wife, who is also co-founder of Black History Studies, her little sister's into photography and filming. So we just set up the cameras and did the video in the front room. And basically it was just about all this white supremacy argument, and white people are the creators of this and that. And like I said in the tune, I've studied your history for long, and all I can see in the history is destruction and murderation and all type of stuff. So I thought, let me just put pen to paper. To be honest, that was one of the quickest tunes I've written in a long time. So yeah, it wasn't hard to write, because all of the evidence was there for me to do it. So I just strung it together, and yeah, there is the end product.
Amazing.
Available for download at culturemarkmusic.com and the other places you can get it from as well. I thought I'd just put that in there.
I'm getting feedback from someone. I'm not too sure who's got some feedback, but just be mindful, because I'm not sure if anyone's using their phones or anything of that nature, but there is some feedback coming through. It might be new, Sandra. Yeah, it may
Is
have
that
been.
better?
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Well, whilst we're on to you, Sandra, if you can introduce yourself to everybody, just to let those who are watching and those who are catching the replay and our panels as well, our guests, know a bit more about yourself. And Sandra, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, I cannot pronounce your surname. I tried, and I said I'm just going to leave it to who this surname belongs to.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kaz, for inviting me to the talk show today. I am Sandra Mtandabari. I am a chartered counseling psychologist, and as Kaz has already said, I'm in private practice, and I do specialize in trauma therapy, and so I look forward to the discussion this evening, and look forward to hearing from everybody else on the panel.
Amazing.
And greetings to the viewers out there.
Thank you. And Brittany, we had Brittany a couple of months ago. She's the one that kick-started off this actual topic that we are going to delve into very shortly, post-traumatic slave syndrome. So if you can just let our viewers and those who are catching the replay, just in case they didn't watch the previous episode, which I know they're going to watch anyway after tonight's show, if you can just introduce yourself and just say exactly where you are based and the work that you do, please.
Sure thing. It's good to be back. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Brittany Works. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a racial equity consultant, and I work with various organizations to provide training and consultations to address structural racism. And so, yes, we had our first conversation about post-traumatic slave syndrome, looking a lot at Dr. Joy's, theory of, post-traumatic slave syndrome and how the impact of slavery continues to impact us and how we, through generational trauma are still dealing with the side effects of that history.
Amazing. I'm going to ask you to elaborate more about post-traumatic slave syndrome in a moment. But if I can go over to you, Akua, somebody's phone is buzzing. Parents. This is what happens when we do live.
Right.
By StreamYard. Yes. So, Akua, if you can just let our viewers know a bit more about you, because you've been on our show, like this is the third time. And the first time you came on, you're the founder of African Spiritual Practices. We was absolutely blown away. Then you made a comment, a reference about unpacking the racism within. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? So that was a whole nother conversation. And I believe even Brittany kind of spoke in reference to that from a previous episode. So that would be very much something that we would like to delve into a little bit more as well.
I've turned mine off.
Yeah, I had my phone on mute.
The devil is a liar, man.
Well, it can be like that sometimes. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for inviting me on again, because we've had some powerful conversations, and when I saw the title, I was really, really super excited to join the panel and really delve in and dive deep. And as you know, most of my views on kind of structural racism and supremacy and the power structures are very much kind of governed by my own African spiritual practice and also use of psychedelics, and body checking as well. So I'm excited about today. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us this evening. And we're going to also talk about your upcoming event a bit later throughout the show as well, because you do have another event that's going to be taking place on the 27th, the 26th and the 27th. Is that correct? August.
That's right.
So we'll share all that information. Iola, I know that you're watching. If you can share the link to purchase a ticket, that'd be fantastic. And I would also do the same as well. So, Miss T, do you want to kickstart off the first point of today's conversation?
Yes.
I think before we do that, maybe we should kind of like start with Brittany in terms of what is post-traumatic slave syndrome, just so that anybody that's watching and they're looking at the title and they're thinking, what is post-traumatic slave syndrome? Sorry, T, Miss T, if you can just kind of explain what PTSD is, please. Brittany?
You want me to start? Okay, yes. So post-traumatic slave syndrome, again, Dr. Joy DeGruy is the person who really came up with this theory, who states that, African Americans, because of our history of slavery and continued oppression in this country, and also coupled with the fact that we don't have access to communal healing, we are therefore continuing to experience the residual effects of slavery. And it is impacting us in various ways in our mentalities and the way that we see ourselves, as we talked about, like internalized racism. So essentially, we have things within our community that are specific to us because of our collective traumatic experience. And the idea of, post-traumatic slave syndrome is also bringing into the forefront our need for healing, for collective healing, not just as individuals, but as a community, because all of the things that we've experienced have been collective, not just one person, but our entire group has had just this egregious history of trauma. And so being able to address it and have resources for healing is also an important aspect of addressing post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so over to you, Ms. T.
Brilliant. So, one of the things that I have found over years of research about us as, and I say Black people, however, that label for me doesn't actually sit well with me. So I wanted to ask the panel, do you feel that in terms of our identity, that if we kind of like release that word, do you think that we can, as a collective, find more healing?
What is that word?
Black.
Black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my question to you is, I guess, what is it for you? You said it's unsettling for you. Why is that? I think I have a better grasp.
Okay, in terms of Black is not a place, it's not a culture, it's not even actually a color. So for us, when they especially use it in politically, for example, when you're having to fill out any government forms and things like that, you have to say Black British, Black African. It's a label that's been given to us. It's not something that, for myself, I'd rather say that I'm indigenous. I'm a Moor. I'm melanated. Those are the labels in terms of the descriptors of who we are as a people. That's what I prefer. But in terms of politically what they do, I feel that just us accepting, well, this is what they call us, so we're just going to run with it. I feel like that there is some trauma within that. And I just wanted to find out from the panel if we could explore that. I hope I've explained it a little bit better.
It's interesting because I hear you, like I hear your perspective. I don't share the same perspective. For me, the term is relatively collective, and it's empowering for me. And, I have more of a, Americanized perspective, and I don't know if that's the general consensus here. But what is interesting is that the idea of Black and white was literally socially constructed for the purposes of continuing racism. So, the idea of like a white man or Black man prior to slavery, it was, your Dutch, your, French or whatever you were, whatever your ethnic group was, you were identified by that group or by your tribe. Even in Africa, it wasn't, it wasn't Black. So the terms definitely came, as a way to separate and promote chattel slavery. But I personally am not offended by it, and I call myself Black, so I'm curious to hear what others think.
I would say if you're going to replace Black, then you have to replace it with something else. So when you say you don't like the term Black, as opposed to what other term? Because the term Moor means Black, and melanation or melanin is the black pigmentation that you find within between your dermis and your epidermis. As you can see, we call ourselves Black History Studies. And the reason why we do that is because we understand, like Sister just said, the term Black is empowering for most people. The problem that we have, there is 2.5 billion people on the continent, and there is a continent of Africa I'm talking about. There is a good majority of them that are blacker than me, that don't see themselves as Black, right? And then there is a lot of them that see themselves as Black and don't see themselves as African. Now, Black people, you can find us in every corner of the planet. And one thing that we can unite with is the fact that we are Black people. Because if you go to the Philippines, where the indigenous people are Black people, and you say to them, come on, let's go and fight for the Moorish or the melanated or the African struggle, they will laugh at you and say, no, I'm Filipino, right? But if you say to them, let's fight for the black struggle that is a global struggle, you would more likely find them agreeing and coming on board with you than if you tried to label them something else. So it depends on how you use the term black. Black is a color. Don't let them fool you, because without black, no other color can exist. Does that make sense? So everything.
I don't want to be, you know, I'm not saying
No. Absolutely. But I'm saying everything on this planet could not exist without blackness, because blackness is the balance. And the term black has been around a long time before the term African. And there was at one stage in history where Europeans, and still do behind closed door, worshipped everything that is black. So we just got to understand the distractions that they put out there in order to distract us from that. Because if we're not black, we're going to be separate groups where they can put us into ethnic minorities, tribal this and all of the rest of that, because they understand if we unite together as one black unit, it's a problem. Because just one more thing, what white people tend to do is they have more issues with their race more than we do, right? So when they're amongst themselves, they're individuals, right? And they fight against each other. That's what's been happening from day one. But when it comes to dealing with us, they are no longer French, Irish, American, European. They come one white people, they deal with us, and then they go back to fighting themselves. So we have to learn lessons from that, is what I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sandra,
thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to jump in there. Thank you very much for that. I think as a collective term of reference, I'm comfortable with it for working purposes. But I think it's also important to kind of identify where the discomfort is coming from and explore that. And that then deviates us from getting caught up with the semantics. I'm an African and I am Zimbabwean. I'm a Black woman. And I'm comfortable with that. It's working purposes is what I use all these terms for, and it evolves and changes depending on the environment that I'm in. So I would say I'm comfortable with the term. It's just, exploring what it is that makes the discomfort, and that then goes back to how the term has been used and exploring a little bit more of the traumas behind the usage of that term. I think that's all I have to add for now. Thank you.
Yeah, I really, this is such an interesting point, because actually when Miss T said it, I kind of almost did an internal scan, and I thought, I recognize there's something incomplete almost in referring to oneself as a color the one kind of actually sort of isn't. So there's two things going on there, isn't there? There's this, we understand blackness, melanin, chaos theory, the fact that everything comes out of blackness. And so there's a lot in there, but I really understand Miss T's, there's something there, because actually it isn't a term that any of us kind of went out and chose for ourselves. So there is something unstable there, but the positive sides of the things that I love about the idea of blackness are probably less to do with human beings than kind of like, space and science and nature. But yeah, I get it, Miss T. It's an interesting one. Yeah.
For sure. Complex.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it as well, because I see I've been teaching for 15 years, and every single year the question comes up and we have to deal with, because there is a lot of Pan-Africanists out there that says, yeah, idiot, we're not calling ourselves Black History Studies, so Black is not a country, Black is not a this, and Black is not a that. But I have to tell them that there is a lot of people that don't see themselves as African, and there is a lot of Africans that don't see themselves as Black. So we have to meet them in the middle in order to give them the knowledge, in order to bring them on board to where they need to go. So I totally get where you're coming from, Miss T, but at the same time, yeah, I'm blackety black black.
That's right.
I
Yeah,
love that. But I just kind of like wanted to add to this. This wasn't really on the points of the areas that we was going to cover, but with regards to us calling ourselves black, now we are getting a new term of being called BAME. Do you know what I mean? Like
foolishness.
I didn't sign for that, and I just don't get it. I don't. I'm not sure if Brittany is aware of it, but in the United Kingdom, we've now been identified as BAME. I believe it's black.
And
What is it?
minority ethnic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't get it. So they're giving us a new title, and almost I feel as if it's like a new level of programming.
It's political. It's political. It's to
So
tick.
I think
Oh,
it's to
it's
include
blame. What is it?
Asian. It's to include the Asian, so it's black
it's not
No,
even
but
to
the
include
Asians are
it.
Asians.
It
and
includes
Asian.
loads
The
of people.
Ace.
It includes
Loads of
white
people.
Australians. It's a very good way of hiding stuff,
History.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
resources.
Yeah.
That's what it's turned into. And but the thing I quite like about the reality that we live in is because there's always the left and the right and the up and the down. So somebody can say, well, if we look at the figures of how well we're doing in the BAME groups, then you can break it down because those figures are also there. And it's like, well, yes, the white Australians under BAME are doing marvelously, but actually this group is this percentage, this group is this percentage, this group
That's
is
But then
this
they
interesting.
look at it
percentage.
collectively rather
Yeah.
than
So I
right.
feel like what we have to try and do sometimes is, that term overstand. When they come up with these new terms, we don't have to get involved in whether we use it or not. We understand why they're using it and we break it down differently because they like it when we are like, we don't want to use BAME, you know?
It's another distraction.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we approach it in a different way.
So
Um,
the way I approached it, because I've been asked this question before, I just broke it down. It means black and minority ethnic. So I said the only thing that is really true in that acronym is the term black, because we are not minority and we are not ethnic. Because if you look up the etymology of the word ethnic, it means that you're a pagan. And we are, and sister, you will tell us from your spiritual side of things, we are far from pagans. So when you break it down like that, you can see it's another distraction. Let it go over your head and focus on what we need to do.
yeah.
I shade to that. I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna go straight to the next part of the conversation. Brittany, in the previous episode, you mentioned that racism in our bodies is racism. You said racism is in our bodies, and also Akua, you even said that as well. You made reference to this, and we had a conversation. Could you expand more, Brittany? If we can start with you, what did you mean like racism is in our bodies?
Right. So what I mean by that's a very short term, but essentially is looking at trauma works, right? So whenever we have traumatic experiences, trauma starts in our body before it, addresses our logic. And what I mean by that is if you're having a traumatic experience, our traumatic responses oftentimes will come in the form of anxiety or um, a racing heart or dry mouth or whatever. Have you ever been driving and then you think a car's going to hit you and then you just you have that like immediate reaction, and before you can logically recognize, okay, I'm not actually in danger in this moment, or this threat has left, your body has had a reaction as though you have gotten into the car accident. And so that's how trauma works. And the same thing happens when we're experiencing racial trauma. And a good book to look at for reference would be My Grandmother's Hands. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's a great book that talks about racialized trauma. But when we have these experiences of racism, they're trapped in our body. And it's really no different from any other type of trauma. This is just how trauma works in general. And so we have these experiences, and that we then pass down, and it's, marked in our DNA. Those markers are, made in our actual DNA. And there's, videos on it, epigenetics, that really discuss how our bodies are impacted by these race-based stress, stressors that occur. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a short synopsis, but of how that works, and you can expand on it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Akua.
Yeah, and as I started to really start to understand and unpack all of that, was really in unpacking also, you've got, for us and for all human beings, really, you've got two things going on at the same time. You've got the trauma that you are experiencing when this thing happens, or you think is going to happen. And then you also have a kind of re traumatizing thing that you do to yourself, which is part of preempting what might happen. It's a protection thing, but that preempting the racism that you think may happen actually gets you to behave to yourself and to other people who look like you in the very manner that you're hoping not to happen. So an example that we've all seen, and most of us who are parents, and Black parents, we know this, is to be in mixed company and your child starts misbehaving.
Yep.
And this anxiety, and especially when you have a boy, this anxiety of he must be well behaved. He must not
Mm-hmm.
be this story of, this crazy behaving Black man. And so we end up overly chastising our children because of the, what I've called the internalized racism.
Sure. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that
Yeah,
okay?
and
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And the thing is, it is complicated because it's a protection, but the protection acts out in a belief at the same time that something is true. And I realized that later, I realized when I stopped having white friends when my son was small. Part of it was seeing how some of them behaved towards us when I suddenly had a Black boy. But the other half, which was much greater, I realized in me, was I didn't like how I wanted to be with him. I saw it in myself, this wanting to police everything he did, this wanting him to be perfect all the time, but not expecting the same of the other children. And
Mm.
so at that time, I just took myself away because actually it was too much. It was doing my head in. I was doing my head in. And what the other people were doing was actually, quite frankly, a lot easier to deal with. It was a lot easier to deal with racism from outside. The harder
Mm-hmm.
thing was my policing of the child. And it was only as he got older that I realized that this internalization of all the dynamics is huge. It's what stops you from going to ask for a loan. It's what stops you from entering that great big building over there that has your ideal job in it. It's what makes you decide that that person who bumped into you, it's because you're Black, not because maybe they had a row or they're looking the wrong way. It's so many different things, and it's all born out of possessing being the victim and truly understanding the oppressor. So you end up doing the two things to yourself.
Yes, and it's funny you say, like, just the idea of policing. And I have a son who's 10 now. I remember I was at Walmart one day, and our neighborhood is Black. We it's a lot of Black people in Atlanta. In this particular area, it's not, you don't see a lot of white people. And we were going into Walmart, and my son had on some pants, some shorts, but they were a little big on him, so they were kind of sagging or whatever. But he just needed like a belt or whatever. So I go, and as I'm going into the store, I see this white man. And before I could logically think to stop myself, saw that white man and I saw my 4-year-old son, and I just like, pull up your pants. Like, just, you need to, pull up your pants. And it was just instinctive. I didn't think about it. I didn't prepare my body to do it. When I saw that white man, I was triggered. And the first thing that came to my mind was, I need to make sure my son is appropriate enough in this, so he doesn't look at him and think that my little boy is that is exactly what came to my brain. And when I realized it, I said, wow, it just happened so quick. So that is that trauma, that's what's in our bodies. You know what I'm saying? That was a visceral, a reaction of the nervous system that occurred, literally, that happened. And we respond to it. And it may not be in policing. It could be policing white people or policing ourselves. It could be when we see the police. Like, if I see the police and I'm driving and my tags are good, I don't have any drugs in my vehicle, I'm all good. But when I see that cop, the first thing I do is like, okay, let me just make sure everything is good. I need to make sure I'm good. We do it all the time around white people. We also naturally have this instinctive desire to coddle white people for our own protection. If we see a white person get distressed, our first thing, especially in a group of Black people, our tendency is to, okay, you okay? Everything's okay, because we know if they get too emotional or too whatever, it can turn into a whole incident. So we have that stuck in us, and it is really wild when we see how pervasive and common it is.
Malcolm X says, "Massa, are we sick?"
Right.
Say that again, Mark.
Malcolm X, in one of his speeches, he says that what Sister Brittany was just talking about in terms of how we fear of if anything would happen to white people amongst loads of Black people. So it stems back to the enslavement period, where your mind is so it's the epigenetics that Sister mentioned before. It's trauma that is passed down through your genes. It has been proven that trauma can be passed down through your DNA. So the racism, and the term racism for me, again, racism is white supremacy and white supremacy is racism. Racism is a system that was set up by the dominant race, let's just call them that at the moment, right, in order to keep non-white people at a lower status based on the tone of their skin, and who would be at the bottom of all of it would be us, because we are the darkest people on the planet. So the racism, so it's not the fact that we have racism in our body, it's the trauma from the racism. So when Sister, she said she was in the Walmart and she immediately thought to herself, pull up her trousers, that's because the trauma of somebody being lynched to have their trousers like that, or somebody, when you're driving and you're good, all of your things are good, it doesn't stop them from lynching you.
That's right.
Because people have been pulled over with a broken tail light and ended up with 25 bullets in them. So it's the trauma that you relive, right? And what you must remember as well, Sister, back me up on this one. I keep forgetting your name, Sister Akua. Back me up on this one. Africans say and know that we are our ancestors, right? So when our mothers and fathers get together and they create somebody, they created another version of themselves in one. So you carry all of their genes, all of the genetic, and then the epigenetics is said it's a mechanism that can switch genes on and off. And to switch them off, you deal with the trauma, but to switch them back on every single time is to relive that trauma, even if you just see it. So that's why the George Floyd murder that took place on the live to the world in 2020. I still haven't watched it, and I don't intend to watch it because I know what it will do. It will trigger the trauma. So these things are deliberately done because that's been played over and over and over and over again. And what they realize what it does is it triggers the trauma within us. And once we're traumatized, there's not really any way that we can think straight. So it's all part of the distraction again.
Forward, and then we don't move forward as well.
Absolutely.
Because it's like we keep on revisiting. I mean, I'm fascinated with Black movies. My nephew says I'm racist all the time. And
You
I
can't
think
be racist because
I
racist
told him,
is a system in place.
Right. This
Yeah.
my dude.
we
He
asked
understands.
for racism.
That's a critical point to make right there.
Yeah,
I
because
just wanted to. Oh,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead,
Kaz.
Sandra.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Carry on,
add on epigenetics that is actually beyond the genes. So you're actually talking about your cells being modified and getting into that mode of switching on and off, as you were saying. So it's actually beyond just the genetics, but the actual structure of your cell is changed. And also just to add on to the points on embodying the trauma, that we are spirit, soul, and body, and what we then tend to see is the manifestation. But the trauma happens, even the brain is part of the body, although it's often separated from the body. So whatever you're internalizing in terms of your brain, that is where we get into schema theory, where I think one of the sisters mentioned how the environment actually prepares you for the fight, flight, or there. Thank you, Kaz. Yeah. So basically, with schemas, we're looking at structures, mental templates that are actually formed because of the environment that we're in, the environment that how we raise our children. I think a couple of you mentioned your boy child and how your own reaction is actually embodied by these young men. And that becomes part of their schemas. And this then leads to what we call maladaptive schemas, maladaptive behaviors, yes. And in there, that's when you get schemas such as subjugation, where you're constantly subjugating. I think again, there was a mention of when you become the protector of the white person. So a lot of schemas are then formed from that. And the other factor that influences the formation of how we respond in situations is the innate personality. So you've got the innate personality, you've got the how you were raised, and the environment that you grew up in. So the way we experience discrimination may be totally different between, for example, a South African and a Black American, because of the environment and how the actual discrimination was perpetuated. So that also then drives how we respond in different contexts. So I just wanted to bring that to say it goes beyond the genes, it becomes embodied and modifies your cells.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to kind of keep hold of the fact that we are spirit, soul, and body. And whatever is happening in the mind then manifests in the body. And oftentimes we then neglect to look at what's happening in the soul. And this is where all the hurt and the pain, and that's the place for, I think, the next point, which is, I think the last point on healing. So I'll pick up from there. Thank you, Kath.
Thank you so much. Okay, because we're going to touch about healing towards the latter part of the show. Yeah, so does anybody have anything else to add in terms of is racism in our bodies?
I just wanted to add something to a point that was mentioned about it's not possible for Black and brown people to be racist. And I think the important thing to always mention with that is that it is possible for Black and brown people to enact racist behavior, racist policies. And so this is why we find in our London hospitals, you've got Black women dying at a higher rate than white women. And the kind of the racist way of treating Black women are enacted by Black and brown nurses and doctors. So it's really important for anybody entering into institutions, because we know that racism, very often where it can have power over you, is in that place of an institution, in the school, in the hospital. So we need to go into those places very well armed, understanding how this institution enacts racism, so that we go in prepared and knowing what questions to ask and what behaviors to demand as well. So we're not always caught off. We're not always caught off guard. You know, we have to do our research and our Googles because we've got to understand the world in which we live in.
Very, very true, my sister. Can I just add to that? The problem that we have is it's the institution that is racist, and the
Not.
laws, the rules, and the regulations that bind that institution is racist. And from day one of schooling, the way we have been schooled and conditioned as people is from a racist perspective. So you're right. We have to go in there armed, but the sad fact is this: only 4 or 5% of people on the planet that look like me and you have that knowledge. The rest of us are just following the protocol, so to speak.
I tend to agree with what you've said, Culture Mark. There is danger of actually diminishing what racism is. Racism is a very structural and a powerful tool, and therefore, clearly, up to today, there is no race apart from the white race that has been able to implement systems of discrimination based on that. Whilst we can, be prejudiced, we can discriminate in other ways, but clearly, when I start hearing, Black people talking about another Black person being racist, that then makes me uncomfortable, because this is how racism is slowly being diminished and being pushed aside. But it's the structures, and the structures we live in. We can just simply look at the war right now, who it's affecting, how it's affecting people on continent Africa. Policies that are very, very much structural. So I think it's very critical that we
I
hold on
think
to the fact
it's
that
important to understand the difference between enacting,
yeah.
because that's what everyone can do.
Okay.
If I'm a nurse and there's another woman who looks like me in front of me who actually now really needs intervention, and I don't offer her that intervention because I'm under a system that says that this Black woman can cope, I am enacting racism. And that's the thing we have to really know, that if I send my children to school, every teacher there can enact racism, doesn't matter their color. If I go to the hospital, every doctor and nurse there can enact it. So we've got to know the places where these things can, take away our lives and our freedom, so we know how to maneuver.
Absolutely, sis. But we must never assume that people know what enacting is.
Exactly.
No. Well, this is a new term.
Yeah.
So
No, but
because
if
racism is slippery, it
yeah.
always changes as soon as you think you've got it. Because really, racism is this. It's a power structure that determines that almost everybody is down here with a tiny few at the top. But within that structure, you put people in all sorts of boxes. So let's even talk about the deaths of women in hospital in the UK. Now, men will survive a lot more things in hospitals in the UK as a whole than women as a whole. And then within that, women as a whole, Black women are surviving slightly less than women. This system is so clever, it puts you in your box and it tries to make out, if you like, that certain people are the only ones who are at the bottom. But this pyramid is full. It's a full pyramid. So you always have to understand the structure to know how to maneuver within the structure, because we're not living in a world where it's kind of like if you're white and you skip into the hospital in the poor part of Newcastle that doesn't have a lot of Black people, you occupy the bottom strata. So it's really important to really understand the spaces we go to and what is the program of that building, that institution, then we know how to maneuver with it. At this moment, people don't know the word enacting racism, but I'm telling you, within 2-3 years' time, people will understand it, because we're already seeing it. We're already seeing the Black nurses and the Black doctors enacting a policy of not giving us the medication and the treatments that we need. And
so
we
it
need to know that.
perpetuates
Yeah,
perpetuates the system's intention.
absolutely.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
do you think? So do you think they're aware of it? So do you think they
No,
actually pay? Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. I don't
yeah.
believe that they're even
No,
aware of
no, no.
it.
Listen, even white people are not aware of it. We give
Yeah.
people too much power by
Mm-hmm.
thinking they're sitting there going, oh,
Yeah.
let
Mm.
me go out and be racist today. The system means the reason why so many teachers, black and white, hate their jobs. The reason why so many police suicide in the police force is huge. Suicide in the medical arena is huge. It's because people are doing things that are against their own nature,
Nature.
but
Yeah.
it's how you do things in that institution.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
and that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
No, nobody wins. Nobody's winning in this at all.
Mm.
Oh yes, there is winners, but
Well, they're
yeah,
tiny. They're at
yeah,
the
they
Yeah,
are
top.
small
tiny, but
Yeah,
percentage.
the tiny majority, the tiny minority controls the most of the majority, and it's an
absolutely.
esoteric and exoteric thing, isn't it? It's those who know and those who are told what to do. So yeah,
Exactly.
All right.
And that's why you have to go in knowing.
Sorry, can I just stop for a moment?
Sorry.
Brittany does have to leave in 10 minutes. She can
Oh,
only give
no.
us.
I know. I'm sorry. Ah, sorry. I'm loving the
Okay.
conversation. It's been wonderful.
Yes, so we're not going to wrap it up, but just to let you guys know, Brittany does need to leave very shortly. So yeah, if we can continue. So when she does say bye, at least we know why. Okay, I kind of rhyme. I got bars. Anyway, yeah, carry on.
This is, I wanted to mention, I know we're talking about, enacting racism, but I wanted to make this point because it's so important to me. But like when we're looking at the root of like what trauma is and we're, the grand scheme of things, it is dysregulation. Like it
Yeah.
is just being dysregulated. And we're looking at it from like a historical racial perspective, but if you're just looking at it one-on-one at your own personal traumas, it is a dysregulation, and it is being in a space where you're trying to, your flow has been disrupted. This the transition, the ability to flow into what is natural and to do what is normal as a community and as a collective, it is that ability to flow into the natural is disrupted now, and it's dysregulated. And so there's the going back in the confusion, and when you think about it and you implement it on a community, is so fascinating because like when we think about kids, I'm a social worker, so I'll put everything in like a social science perspective. You have a kid whose parents may be, drug addicted and have all of these adverse childhood experiences. We have, this idea of what to expect or what to prepare for in terms of what this child may experience and have to deal with emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And then it's like when you just think about that one child and put it in terms of an entire group of people for generations and generations and generations, it's like, man, we've been through some stuff. Like sometimes I just sit back and I'm like, we've really, just been through some stuff.
Hmm.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's not a recent thing. These things
No,
have been planned and put into place for
long time.
centuries, for
Mm.
centuries. And
Absolutely.
what's happening now, if you either know the history or you don't, is that the system, the current system, is crumbling.
Yes.
Yeah, they know it's crumbling, so they're going by
Yep.
any of the measures that they need to in
Mm.
order to get things back under control.
Yeah.
Hence, us being imprisoned as a part of a social scientific what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for?
Experiment.
Social scientific experiment
Yeah.
to see how we would react under certain conditions. And as you can see, it's worked. I still see people traumatized from the last 2 years of what's happened, but it's all part of the system to keep everything, like Sister said, deregulated and distracted so they can implement what needs to be implemented in
I
order to
know
keep in control.
I know in the US we see a lot of things going on with our Supreme Court, and like, we have a lot of anti-abortion laws now. The federal
Mm.
government no longer is protecting that. A lot of people don't understand that this whole idea of being anti-abortion is a very much historically a white idea for population control. Like, this country in the United States by 2045, white people will be the minority in the country. Most people will be, brown or have some color to them, and so you have white women who are not producing children at the same rates that they used to, and you have, now you put laws into play that prevent that. Because when you really look at the party who's preventing anti-abort, they don't care about nothing else. It's socially. Why is it you have this huge fascination and obsession almost with protecting this particular group? But a lot of that is rooted in this fear of extermination.
Yeah.
They're on a -0 birth rate.
Exactly.
Don't
They're dying out.
yeah, don't quote my stats here. I'm just using this as an example of how it works, right? For every one African that dies, 1 million Africans are born. For every million Europeans that die, one European is born. So they're in deep trouble, and this is what all of these laws, rules, and regulations are in
Oh
there.
yeah.
This is why population has come in. Population control has been in for decades after decades after decades. In fact, centuries now. And this is why somebody said to me, "Oh, they're trying to kill us all." They're not trying to kill us all,
No,
because they have the
they tried that.
technology, and
They
they've
would
had no,
have.
they've never tried that.
No,
What they've understood is, right, they cannot survive without us,
Yeah.
That's
right?
correct.
But we've got to understand
The
that for
offspring cannot
ourselves.
survive. The offspring cannot survive without the host, and we are the host. So anything that they try to kill us off, we'll kill them as well. So rather than kill us off, they want to control the population. That's what it's about.
well,
But
Yeah,
they've tried,
but what
they've tried it. They've tried to limit our numbers,
mhm,
but they've been not having children faster than they've been trying to limit our numbers. So
absolutely.
now, there are some European countries now that are starting to pay women, to have children, and they're going to have to do that all the way round, because it's still Mexico is in the minus, Russia's in the minus, the UK white population is in the minus. UK doesn't look like it's in the minus because they like to count everybody, but if you count just the white population, they're in the minus. Italy's seriously in the minus. Poland seriously in the minus. So it's in a way, I feel like these are things to try and help us to start to let go of some of our traumas, because the trauma can make us feel a bit like everything's rosy over there, but it's not.
It's not.
Yeah, but I think
Really
that's the
not.
perception that they're being portraying to us, and that's the reason why we believe it's our problem. We're the only one that has a problem, and everybody else is fine. Janelle asked a question. One of our co-hosts for Now Chat Show asked: "Is someone who is mixed and looks white still black?" And
Yep.
she
Yes.
Next question.
Yes, indeed.
okay, cool. So you're still black, but then at the same time, like we know about colorism and things like that, and people passing the brown paper bag test and things like that. But we do have a lot of people, black people who are leaning on very much of, well, my granddaddy's got mixed this and he's got Spanish this and this, that, and the other. And it's almost like you're denying your blackness
Oh yeah.
to kind of balance out, I'm not really black, but I've got all of this kind of mix. What's going on there?
Let me
So
say, because
yeah, go
I
ahead,
think
Brittany.
it's
So
quickly.
go ahead,
So
Brittany.
it's an issue of
Sorry,
identity.
Sandra.
Oh,
Sandra,
sorry. Okay.
could we let Brittany go, because she's only got
yeah, this
5
will be my
minutes
Alright.
last
remaining.
comment. Really, whenever I hear this question, I always say, if this was the time of slavery, would you be a slave or would you be, free? And the answer is, if they knew your mama was white, you were going to be a slave. They don't care how light or white your skin is. If you did not, and passing wasn't a popular, as common as people kind of think it is. This was something that usually people who were passing would have to, they were far away from their families. They weren't, this wasn't just some, oh, I'm light, let me just go pass. Like, you had to put in some work to be able to pass. Like, you have to have a story, So yes, absolutely. What they say, one drop is the rule.
Mhm.
I live by that rule.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. It's been
How
great.
long do you have with us, Brittany? You
You
can
said
give us a little grace.
I could maybe a few minutes. I'm sorry.
We don't want to push it. We don't want to push it.
I'm actually in Vegas right now, believe it or
Oh,
not,
wow.
in the middle of vacay, and it's like, yeah. So,
Oh, okay. All right. We won't keep you. We understand. We
Okay,
understand.
we're going to keep you as long as possible, Sister Brittany. we don't business
I am
about
loving the
vacay.
conversation too. It's
Okay,
wonderful.
I stopped Sister Sandra. Sorry, go ahead, Sister.
Yeah, go ahead, Sandra, please.
I think it was the issue of the identity. Again, it's going back to how, the environment that the person is actually raised in. And it's interesting because mixed race people from South Africa, from Zimbabwe, from England, they all experience and embody, their mixed race status in very different ways. And therefore, that's where you would have the terminology such as colored. And, when you're here, it switches to, black. So it's what's behind these divisive labels, and what does that mean for the person? Because if in my observation, there is a vast difference between perhaps one who is raised by an African mother with a European father, or an African father with a European mother in the same environment. So there is something about, how the child is actually raised, and the identity that, the parents perhaps, enforce with them. But then taking that child from that environment into a different environment, they're going to experience a totally different sense of shaking to their identity. So it's always important, I suppose, from a therapeutic perspective, to explore how the person has come to that place of, dissonance with who they are.
My son is mixed, and so he had Black African mother and white father, and it's quite interesting because I was taught to speak my language from dot, so that was always important to me, that if I had children in this country, they would speak my language. We would move back to Ghana, replicating really what happened with me, and so that's what we did. But I always find it really funny that the woman who taught me how to ensure that my son would grow up speaking our language was actually a French woman, because I'd been asking people, and my mum couldn't remember how come I could speak Tree, but my siblings who were also born here don't speak Tree. So I knew there was a formula, and I met this French woman who was talking to her kids in French, and then I heard them speaking with perfect English accents. So I thought, this is a woman who knows. And she kind of looked around like she's sharing something a bit dodgy. And she was like, when they get to about 4 or 5, they're going to want to stop speaking the language. And you're going to have to use a little bit of violence in the home.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Discipline.
You know.
Violence, discipline.
Discipline, yes, discipline. And you know what? It was true. With my son, it was a bit later. It was more like 5.5. And she also said to me, the secret is, don't answer him back if he speaks to you in English. Only answer him back if he speaks to you in your language. So I did all of that. So my son was fluent from as soon as he was talking. But yeah, when he got to about 5.5, suddenly, as we got closer to school, he would start to speak English. So he was really into certain fruits. So I would have a fruit. After a while, I'd have a fruit, and we'd get near the school. He wants the fruit. You have to speak Tree before you get your fruit. And later on, sometimes I had to be a little bit of a, you're not supposed to be speaking English in the house. But it worked. So now he's 20. He's moved back to Ghana as a mixed race man who speaks fluent Tree. Yeah. And it's very
and he has cognitive advantage, actually, because language is So well
language
done to you,
culture.
Akua.
Yeah, language and culture. And the white side are very, very middle class. They've run away from their Welsh culture to become English. So they act very English. If they were very Welsh, he would have very equal, but they're very English, what they think is English.
And it's interesting you say they run away from their Welsh culture. That in itself is a dynamic.
Absolutely.
That goes to show you how
English.
That goes to show you how they were treated by the English, and
Horrible.
it brings back to the question where Sister Sandra rightly said that it's all to do with environment. Does that
Yes,
make sense?
100%.
In terms of the discipline that
100%.
you was talking about, Sister Akua, right? There's a saying in ancient Egypt that sometimes children will realize that their ears are on their backside.
I love it.
So there's nothing wrong with the discipline once it's controlled. But in terms of people running, I got Indian in my family, I got Portuguese in my family, I got this. In terms of that syndrome, that's to do with a lot to do with ignorance of your own culture, ignorance of your own history, and being fluent in the oppressor's history that is part of your history that's not necessarily good for you. Does that make sense? So they want to clutch on to what they believe is the more superior part of their history in order to feel more superior, and that's only to do with ignorance, because if they understood who they was, where they were coming from, who their people were, what their history is, they would be quick to be like me, blackety black. Does that make sense? So, without apology, and it's funny that you should mention Twi and Ga coming out of Ghana. Those languages were banned in Ghana. Ghanaian children, up until about 5-6 years ago, were not allowed to learn those languages, and any schools caught teaching those languages could be fined. So you can see that the racism just doesn't stop there; it goes right across wherever global Europe is. So yeah, people need to recognize that as well.
But going back to what you were saying, Mark, in regards to those that thinks that, you know, if they've got Portuguese or whatever, then, you know, they think that they're more superior. But would you not say that how they just don't want to deny that part of who their heritage has come from? Do you get what I'm saying?
No, it's the fact that they don't know. If they knew how rich their heritage was, they would be latching onto it. And if they realized the reason why they have Portuguese, French, European, and all that in their blood, 9 times out of 10, the reason is to do with enslavement or some form of misdemeanor that went back, that they would be quick to change the narrative. But it's because they don't know. They're only going on what. So the perfect example is what Sister Akua said about the Welsh side of her son's family latching onto the British. This is because of all of the negativity that's been told about the Welsh, same way as the negativity that's been told about the African. This is why people don't want to associate themselves with black, because everything black, like Martin Luther King said in one of his speeches, has been demonized, and everything white has been made great. Does that make sense? This isn't based on any truth. It's just based on narratives that have been put out there and have been repeated so much time. You believe it's truth. Professor Kaba Kamene, he would say that sometimes the fiction is so well told that the truth becomes unbelievable. So this is what's happening. People are basing their existence on a lie, which they know nothing about but just believe. And don't get me started on believing, because that's another story for another day.
Okay, so Brittany, I'm conscious of time. Do let us know when you need to go.
I need to go now.
Okay.
I've enjoyed you all
Thank
so
you,
much.
Brittany.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you so much for your
Enjoy the rest of
contribution.
your holiday.
Touch.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
Vegas.
I will.
Vegas, next to Vegas.
All right. Yes, it's a good time. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Okay. Right. So let me just remove. Right. So the next point, we talked about white supremacists, but I still think we need to kind of, because I know, Mark, when we did the first live, you was like, there is no such thing as white supremacists. If you could just expand more with regards to that for the viewers and everybody that's on the panel.
Okay, so in my humble opinion, something can only remain and have credit if it's given credit and it's kept alive by the narrative that is put alongside it. So in order to deal with white supremacists, we have to deal with the word supremacy. And supremacy comes from the word supreme, right? And the supreme basically means the highest or the best, right? So it's in terms of achievement, in terms of performance, in terms of everything. You have to be the highest and the best at it. So when I look at white supremacy, there is nothing that I can see that whites have done that is more supreme to what we have done. So that's why I says it doesn't exist. The concept exists, right? Because the dominant race, and I say race lightly because as far as I'm concerned, there's only one race, and that's the human race, and everything else has been split up, right? But what I'm saying is the dominant group on the planet, right? They are controlling what's going on. So they are seen as supreme because everything that comes out is being put there by them. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was created by them or it was derived from them. It's just that they control it. So they are the dominant people as opposed to the supreme people.
Culture, can I come in there?
Yeah, go ahead, sis.
The domineering group.
Yeah.
Not the dominant.
Okay. So you see, English is my first language, but I'm still struggling to learn it.
No.
I know I have some.
It's not actually an issue of the English language.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what you're saying when you said the dominant. Yeah. But actually, they're not necessarily the dominant. They're the domineering.
Yeah.
And I like your dominance. Idea. I like your idea that it's actually a belief system, the whole concept of white supremacy, rather than a reality.
Yeah, you've mentioned the B word again. We're going to get back to that word. Trust me. I know it's going to come up again, but I'm not going to deal with it now because we're going to stick to the topic. So white supremacy. White supremacy.
Let's use the term domineering group, because I must admit, I feel funny with that WS word. I really don't like. I don't even like to have it out of my mouth because it feels like I'm giving. I'm weaving that spell to make it true. I like domineering group. Brilliant.
I like that as well.
Yeah, I like that as well.
Speaking it into existence, is it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Language is everything, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm gonna write that down. I love that.
Right down
group.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so glad we cleared that up because I refuse to say it.
Me too.
No, the thing is, you was refusing to say it, but I was saying like, but the white supremacist does exist, and Mark was like, no, it doesn't. There's no such thing as white supremacy. I could actually hear you shouting through the comments, Mark, and even T was just backing you up.
Shoot, that's when I was in Jamaica. That's where I met Brittany because Brittany was the one that made me want to come on here.
That's the reason why we're having part two, because you guys were so. I mean, guys, if you haven't watched part one of the post-traumatic slave syndrome, please do check it out in your own time. Of course, not now because you're here with us, but do check it out and make sure you do share these live podcast interviews, because there's so much information, so much history. I feel like I'm just in school. I've got my notepads and I'm taking my notes, etc. So make sure you do the same. And if you have any questions for the panel, please do put those questions.
Come back, Kaz.
Kaz,
come back. Yes. In mid-action, mid-passion. I'm sure she will come back.
She has to run the show now.
She was saying too much.
She will come back. She will come back.
The group. That's what normally happens.
She'll come back. But I'm so happy, Sandra, that you've given us this new.
You guys was there like an interruption just then, or was it just my?
Yes, we lost you there.
You were frozen like this.
About 30 seconds.
It's a lot.
Yeah, you're gone again.
She's gone again.
You're gone again.
Please continue until she comes back.
When she comes back, everybody just stay there like this.
But it's interesting because we live in a world where everything's upside down. So this domineering group that's holding, you know, the world to ransom while it steals and pillages from the masses for a tiny few, and yet they can't replace themselves, and yet they are, you know, intrinsically weaker, as you know, fundamentally. So it feels like, not in a way to I have to put somebody down to feel better, but more of a kind of just understanding the realities that can just help to bring down our trauma a bit, because it literally is not as black and white as we've been taught it is. The fact that your middle class white man has the highest suicide rate is very, very, very fundamental. That
Because
there
they're
is
having to deal with their own beliefs, which
absolutely the
which actually
dissatisfaction
feed
in the
into that.
system. Yeah, you know, it's a system that's really and it has to be on its knees because too many people are sick in it. And the higher up you go, if we, you know, I'm sure anybody who's had the privilege or the weirdness to enter into some of the spaces of the real controllers, you know, the upper classes, the dysfunction is amazing. And it's not a surprise that the higher up you go, you find the pedophilia, you know, just so much violence. It's unsustainable for any groups of human beings to carry on like that. So I feel like in some ways we could just sit back and watch the show. You know, understand the rules, but sit back.
Yeah, there's an old saying that originally comes from the Ashanti in Ghana, but more recently made popularized in Jamaica, is the higher the monkey climbs, the more the monkey exposes. Let's just say that. So yeah, the higher up you go, the more you see the dysfunction. And then what you said there, sis, about not wanting to bring another person down to make us feel good. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah,
And their
we don't need to join
projection,
them.
their projection, or how they project us to the rest of the world, is basically their own faults, which makes them feel better. So again,
Exactly.
it's a psychological thing that they're dealing with. But once you understand who you are and know yourself, these things become irrelevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So on that note, what you were talking about, because I feel like I didn't really get to express and explain what I was saying about. So I'm just going to put it to you like this. And I always like to use this perspective in terms of, because I'm a parent, I'm a mom, and I used to do a lot of work with children. And, you know, children are very candid and they will say what it is. And so in raising my two Nubian children, one of the things, obviously, because they're a lot darker than me, I'm fair, my mom's fairer than me. And in terms of explaining to children, because they'll be like, but mommy, you're not black. I'm not black.
Yeah.
Mum's not black. Do you understand? So I would explain to my children that, you know, we are many different hues. And that's one of the reasons why I was saying, like, to kind of stick all of us underneath that. And I'm not, you know, there's certain times where obviously, yes, I have to say, yes, I'm a black woman, because it's just easier to just explain it that way, right? But in terms of the children, right, I had to break it down for them that way. And in terms of going forward, because I want to speak about the healing, because as far as I'm concerned, the healing starts with the children. So what are we explaining and what are we teaching them? So I really wanted to make that really clear. So going forward, one of the things that I've analyzed for myself and now I explain to my children, because I don't want them to get stuck in this construct of you're black, this white. I'm just like, you know what? There are good people and there are bad people, right? Because otherwise, you know, I want them to understand that there are evils in this world and there are good, great things in this world, and to put different colors in terms of people. So going forward, what I'm asking you, what I'm saying to you in terms of, we're going to talk about healing, and I know we don't have a lot of time. How do we heal as a people? How do we break generational curses and teach the children? What are we teaching the children? It's quite big. There you go.
Yeah. No, I love that, because it reminded me of having such a similar conversation with my son, where one day he obviously had been playing on his mind, and then so one day I'm doing something, and then he just goes to me, he goes, "Mummy, I'm golden and you're brown." And I knew what he was pointing out, because it was a stuck moment, because when a child is really small and you're trying to say to them, literally you're spending your time trying to say to them, I am telling you something that's not a truth, while telling you certain other things are true with what you see. And I totally get what you mean, because we ended up having this very big conversation about politically black and what you're seeing with your eyes. And it was really, really interesting, because I realized the double speak that goes on to make sense of this world, and out of the mouth of babes, it really was a thing of, yes, you're right, you are golden and I am brown, and we are also black, and this is what that means. But no, you are golden. I'm not saying you're not golden, and I am brown. And it was a very weird, there's something muddy going on in there, but we get it, we understand it. But when we have the children,
and on another level, spiritually, because if we look at ourselves as spiritual beings also, and and for myself, I struggle a lot with what the narrative that is being given, because for myself, when I think about, yes, I've been through these traumas, but I'm a spiritual being, and I know that I can transmute, I can change, I can tear down structures and build up. And do you understand me? So for me, I find it very difficult to kind of like accept that. I understand what is being said. However, for me to translate that into something positive, the negative, it's an oxymoron.
Sorry.
I think
go ahead, Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to make a point about I suppose it goes to the point of healing. There is a form of therapy, cognitive processing therapy, which is specifically for trauma, and it's targeting the beliefs around the actual, what traumatizes one, and not advocating that you necessarily reclaim Black in a positive way. But I think it's still very critical to kind of think about the fact that we're dealing with the human condition of discrimination. If you're thinking from a Christian perspective, you would say until Jesus comes. So these are issues that we are going to be having to deal with collectively. So we're looking at dealing with them on an individual level, how it has impacted on you. Then we're looking at it from a communal and a relational space as well. But I think it's critical to think about, there is so much that feeds into the traumas that then manifests in so many ways. And if for example, the example you give, we're talking about self-esteem. How does that feel when you're called a Black person? Automatically it kind of perhaps brings in all the stuff that comes with low self-esteem. So I think it is quite important to think about how we can work with such terminologies to come out, the other end. Not that, I'm advocating you embrace them, but I think it's just important that that piece of work is also done, because there is clearly something there, and people are not going to necessarily shift from using that term on yourself. They will still do that, and it's going to continue to trigger, whilst you may be using a different.
It's not a trigger for me.
Okay.
Can I just say? I have 5 daughters,
Yes.
1 granddaughter, 2 sons, right? Majority of my children are big people, but I still have some little ones. My granddaughter is 2, and my youngest two daughters are 7 and 8. And the same question that you said, sister, what's your name again?
T.
Sister
Miss
T,
T.
Sister T. The same question that you said came up with my daughters. And how I explained it away was that, yes, we are all black because we all came from black. There are different shades of black, right? Based on environment, based on where you are, based on narratives that are put towards you as well. So there's all different shades of black. There are over 34 different shades of black on the continent of Africa, right? Going from blacker than me to almost white, and these are indigenous. There's no mixture in between them. So this is how great black is. And then I explained that everything comes from black. I explained that with your blackness there is a superiority because you don't necessarily need to do this. And I what I do is I put positives on top of the terminology so that they are positive in the way that they think about it, regardless of what they hear. Then, because me and my wife teach history, we teach black studies, etc., it becomes easier for us to explain to them because we have the history and the black studies and all of the knowing, the knowledge behind it to galvanize them. Now, Sister Sandra mentioned something about self-esteem. I would go further than that. Self-esteem is an individual thing. We have to now push forward racial esteem, because our race of people, let's just put it that way for the argument's sake of this conversation, the African race has been denigrated on every platform since the last 200, 300, 400 years, just to justify what Europeans have done to us, right? Now, what we do is we adjust the balance. And we come back in with some positive truths, right? Because at the end of the day, it is all about the children. They are the future. And you mentioned something about the healing has to be with them. Before you can heal them, my sister, I'm afraid you're going to have to heal yourself. Right? Otherwise, you won't be able to deal with them on that level. So the healing starts with you. If you drop down, they are in trouble. So you have to make sure that you are paramount. You are first. Deal with yourself first. Be selfish in this condition, because once you deal with yourself, it's easy to deal with them. Most definitely.
I totally agree with you. And hence, and the reason one of my children, I'll just give you his name in the English form, is Black Majestic Warrior of the Most High. Every time his name is called, it's an attribute. And, you know, so yes, it's very important, and they know their roots.
One more correction in order to stay in control of the conversation. If you say that your children are Nubian, then you are wrong, because Nubia, because the term noob is the ancient Kemetic term for the word gold, right? Nubia is the land of gold, and Nubian is people from the land of gold. Does that make sense? But the term Nubia is basically meant to just give it to them. Them black, they're African. Does that make sense? They are from the continent that is now called Africa.
As you might have heard or heard, I have interchanged and used many different, characterizations, because I don't want them to be stuck in this one, area. No, I want them to know that, you are who you want to be, not who he says you are or she says you are. You can,
But you have to give them a basis of who they want to be. You have to give them that following. You have to give them that light to look towards in order for them to say, I want to be that. Does that make sense? And that's why,
foundation, isn't it?
Yeah. The foundation is knowledge of self.
Knowledge of self and obviously of their culture as well. So
someone just put something in the chat that I thought was brilliant about the Benin bronzes that are going to be given back to the Kingdom of Benin. And one of the things it reminded me of, and I'd kind of really forgotten this fact, was 1895, 1896, when they were burning down the palace and stealing and looting. They were doing exactly the same thing in the palace in Kumasi. And one of the tactics that they used in both Nigeria and in Ghana was tearing down buildings that were over 1 story high, because there was already a decision to plant the story of our lack of achievement. And so I really see the Benin bronzes going back as a way in which people can start to tap into the fact that you don't even have to go as far as ancient Egypt. When you see the drawings that they did themselves of the kingdom of Benin, of the kingdom of the Asante, the tree-lined streets, you know, decent sanitation, you actually get to understand how colonialism was won. And it was won through complete and utter violence. I think they like us to really have our heads stuck in slavery, because, you know, that helps them also actually look good in that roundabout sort of way. But actually, it's not that long ago that our story had to be, you know, destroyed. So I'm excited by the prospect of the Benin bronzes uncovering a recent, rich African history, complicated still, with plenty of enactments going on all over the place as people try to preserve themselves. But in all of that was still our greatness not that long ago. So we're living in interesting times, man. It's all happening all at the same time. All the timelines are crashing into each other. So this is definitely a time to go inwards as an individual, and then you'll find your group. But you got to go in first, because it's mad, it's crazy.
Thank you, Sister Sandra, with your definition for Nubian. Thank you so much.
That's what I kind of said, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was I going to say?
Actually,
as you mentioned, the Benin bronzes, yeah, it's important, but for me, that's just another distraction. They need to give us back our continent, and then we can start all over again if
but
we
they're
have
not going to do that, though, Mark.
Well, then we're going to have to take it, innit?
Well, I was going to say, you have to take it, because if somebody gives you something, it's still their power. Exactly. But I see it more as it's an opportunity for people to see the story. It's blocks.
I get that.
It's little blocks. I mean, you know, I'm African, and I'll tell you for now, not one gold mine is going to be taken back by a single Ghanaian at the moment, while they're diving into the churches faster than you can get water out of the tap.
Religion was on.
Okay, so religion is
on the agenda actually, and I had omission and commission next to it.
All right, so did you guys? Because obviously I had some technical glitches with my Wi-Fi. Did you guys touch on the impact of PTSS on our mental health, or we're going to go straight to religion?
Well, you can do the mental health. We can, because it's good to do the mental health, isn't it? I mean, religion is part of mental health.
Well, because you touched on about the gold mines and you talked about religion and church, etc. Maybe we can just go to religion and then we can go to mental health afterwards. So, what has religion got to do with it? What's religion got to do with like a post-traumatic slave syndrome?
I would say, and as a Ghanaian, just the inability to have a lie-in on a Sunday wherever you are in that country, because somebody has plugged in a system to scream and shout about the Bible everywhere you go. It's the indoctrination. It's the indoctrination that really keeps the African down. And so, unfortunately, you can't. What is it they say that Einstein said? But I think it's actually an older saying. You know, you can't kind of cure yourself with the brain that kind of created the problem in a way. You need a different brain. And so the brain that's maintaining the status quo on the continent, unfortunately, is held in a vice-like grip. And I'll just give you a tiny example. When I lived in Ghana, I tried to cover the gutter that was outside of my flat and shop because I lived above my shop, and we had so many mosquitoes, and I didn't want to pour DDT or something down the drain. The water's going to go off into the sea. So I just wanted to cover it. And being a immature, silly person, I thought, let me go and ask the town council before I start covering up gutters. And I wasn't given permission to cover the gutter at my own expense, leaving a place that it could be lifted up. And after a while, I started telling people this story, and I heard more stories like this, including in Mokola, the biggest market. There's so much rotten rubbish every day. And it turns out somebody was willing to pay for that rotting rubbish to be removed every day, and it wouldn't cost the council a penny. And the more of these stories I heard, that's when I started realizing, if you're scared to just walk along the street because you might fall in a hole, and so you're always looking down. When you're in somewhere like Ghana, you're always looking down because there could be a pothole anywhere. A gutter could be overflowing anywhere. Every year, the place floods. You need to keep people under that kind of pressure so they don't think about their gold that you're taking every single day. And the religion is only just one part of this. It's like a lockdown on the people on the continent, and it happens so many levels, but the religion is like the top layer of that lockdown. And then, like we were saying with institutions and racism, it's institutional. Keeping Africa the way it is institutional. And
Thank you.
that's so that's why it's going to be so difficult.
Thank
So
you
difficult.
very, very much. Yeah. I
Sandra?
mean, that's a, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
do you
a
want to
hot,
go?
yeah, that's
Continue.
a hot topic for me because I'm currently researching into spiritual abuse for my professional doctorate. And, you know, it's interesting because the Church of England recently had to revisit one of their, you know, church laws, etc., on looking at redefining marriage. And it was interesting that the African bishop said that they needed to uphold what they had agreed in 1996, that marriage is between a man and a woman. And his comment was, for far too long the church has been driven by Western ideology, because the West have moved on, they've moved the goalpost. Now they want to redefine marriage and say it can happen between a man and a man. So as you were talking, I could see how, you know, the institution of the church in itself is very much colluding oftentimes with the abuses that are happening on the continent. And that was very interesting to watch the debate unfold, that we cannot, because the Anglican Church majority is actually in the non-Western world, and
Exactly.
their vote counts. And you know, having to revisit something that was agreed upon because it now suits the appetites of the West was what was at bay. And their argument was, we're not saying we're not loving, we're saying we're holding to the biblical truths. And so spiritual abuse and using the power and authority of the church, you know, within, I think you being from Ghana, you would know, because the church is right above the dungeons where slave trades took place.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there is a lot of controlling and coercion in the name of Jesus, so to speak. And so I think the church has a lot to do with the hurt, and that could be the place where we also need to look at how racism has actually manifested within that institute. And there is a real need for a revamp, because people are going into church for spiritual and nourishment, but they are coming out of there more wounded than when they entered. So I think,
And
you know, the
that's the
church has a
purpose
lot
of it.
to answer for.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of it. Listen, right now in Ghana, if I went along and I wanted to start a church, I can get a loan for 25 years to pay that loan, like a mortgage. Let me go and start up my sewing business in Ghana. I can only get a loan for about 2 years. I've got to pay that back. So even financially, you're more worthwhile joining in this system that keeps everybody down. And then when you do find the church, start a church, there are so many grants coming from Europe and America giving free money to churches. You know, when they show these pastors in their private planes, they did not get the money from the 5 cities that people are putting in their collection bowls. They're given private planes. They're given Rolls Royces by their real masters. And so this is
I've never heard that one before.
hard. Pardon?
Is there any information to back that? Because I didn't know that.
Yeah. If you're there and you get to ask the right questions, you just start finding really interesting, because people don't always know what they're saying when they're saying it. I worked for Joy FM when I was in Ghana, and we worked on a documentary show, and people will tell you things, you put it in a report, by the time the editors have had a look, crucial bits chopped out, because Joy FM multimedia, every few years they win these amazing kind of journalism things that come mostly out of Europe and America, and they get a couple of million. You know, you don't have to be obvious in your control, but the right people know whose ass has to be kissed so that they can maintain their power. So just like we know that in the West, all media houses are under the system. It's one of the ways in which we're controlled. It's international. All media houses are there to preserve the status quo. And all religion is there to preserve the status quo. Every institution is up to its tricks. So it's a hard one.
Can I just say then?
Absolutely, go ahead.
First thing we need to do is not confuse religion with spirituality.
Exactly.
Spirituality is an African concept. It's an African thing. It's been there from day dot, right? If it wasn't for spirituality, we wouldn't have certain things that we have now. If it wasn't for spirituality, a lot of us wouldn't be here, because it was that spirituality that kept our ancestors going through the real tough times. Religion is a man-made business. It's a man-made institution. And don't be fooled. All religions are man-made, and all religions are coming from the African concept of spirituality. This is why it's so familiar to us. This is why the epigenetics kicks back in again, because there's certain things within our DNA that triggers us when we hear certain things coming from the Bible, coming from the Quran, coming from the Torah, whatever it is. Does that make sense? It's all ingrained within our DNA. So all religions are man-made, and all religions are made to control. Now, the fact of the matter is, there is this concept of that if you do good on earth, you will get your rewards in heaven. Well, those who are raising hell on earth are getting their rewards right now, and that's how the religious system works. Now, religion is the biggest problem that we have on the continent, because it doesn't divide, it subdivides and quarter divides, and it keeps dividing. For argument's sake,
it's not just the continent; it's in the entire world, though.
No, the entire world. But I have to look towards the continent, because that's the breadbasket of the whole planet. If the continent was to shut its doors tomorrow, like China did 50 odd years ago, the whole world would suffer, and they know this. Does that make sense? So this is why it is they've got a grasp on the continent, and they use religion to do it. Does that make sense? So when people are bound by religious beliefs, and the B word came up again, and I'm going to have to break it down. So belief is not something I deal with, right? Because belief is basically it's an acceptance of something that exists or is considered true, but especially without proof. So everything that is coming from religion is based on a belief system. And we have been coaxed into believing that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, based on this book that they call the Bible, right? Old Testament. And the Old Testament basically is Jewish. It's Judaism, just in case those Christians didn't know. and the New Testament is the Christian, the new teachings coming for the Christians after the Old Testament. But the Judaism doesn't recognize Christianity. Does that make sense? So they're calling them calling it a holy Bible, again, isn't true. All of these concepts are coming out of ancient Egypt. Can't go into that right now because that's a whole lesson, a whole Zoom in itself. But the point is, the religion is what's mashing us up because it divides us. For argument's sake, Nigeria, one of the most populated countries on the continent, unofficially 275 million people, they're all divided by religion. Some of them are Jewish, some of them are Muslim, some of them are Christians. And then in between that, you'll have Igbos, you'll have Hausas, you'll have Yorubas, you'll have all of these divisions and in between Yorubas and Igbos and whatever, you'll have the breakdown of Jewish and all of these things conflict. And what they do is they break them up into ethnic groups, which again doesn't make them one big group, which again serves the purpose of the people that bring in these religions to keep us separated. So in order for us to deal with the religious thing, we have to put everything to one side and come together as one black people to deal with our issues as one people. Otherwise, we will go around and round in circles. Because I was in Ghana one time, and this was in my naive days. This was like 20 years ago. And I was in the taxi cab, and the man had the picture of white Jesus on there. And I was like, who's that? Who's that? And he said to me, it's my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's me. But he don't look like you. Get out of my cab. The man was ready to kill. The man was ready to kill me because I blasphemed against his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I was like, brother, you need to do some more reading. Because if your Savior looks like your oppressor, can you see it's hard to deal with your oppressor?
I think we're kind of leaping into, sort of how people mitigate the anxieties that come with the existential givens. And so some people will use that to address the whole notion of, death. They will use that to address the whole notion of freedom. So I think it's almost, we're also challenged as to how we can use those spaces, because those spaces exist and they may not necessarily dismantle immediately, because if you look from Cape to Cairo, there is so much different spiritual practices, there is so much different religions, but I'm wondering whether actually there is room to penetrate those spaces and perhaps bring in a different, for lack of a better word, doctrine within those spaces as well. That's just an idea.
Yeah.
Because it's a big task.
Yeah, it is a big task, but in order for us to do it, there has to be a general consensus. There has to be an agreement between us that certain things have to be left off the table, and we'll deal with ourselves, and these things can be dealt with afterwards. But again, just to get us sitting all around the table is another argument that.
Because we embody all the systems that we operating in. We've got the internalized racism, we've got the colonial mind for some of us who come from formerly colonized countries, and I'm talking recently independent, 1980, South Africa, 94. So there's still quite a lot of hurt from that, a lot of trauma from that still needs to be addressed and looked at, and how that then plays to the actual individual as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody just mentioned in the chat that Nigeria's problems were more tribal, and the religion came afterwards. That is somewhat true, but not 100%, because the tribal problems that happened in Nigeria was implemented by the Europeans.
Yeah, they definitely, because there were different states clumped together.
Exactly. They drew lines in between certain things as well. Like, don't get me started. But again, a lot of people don't realize this, that tribalism is not an African concept.
That's what I was going to say.
Tribalism is a European concept. Yeah. The first tribes on this planet were Europeans, and they express tribalisms. Now, the different groups, I like to call them, on the continent of Africa were different groups of people. They lived harmoniously. Don't get me wrong. They would have their differences. They would have their squabbles, but never once did they have 100-year war. Does that make sense? Whereas this was natural in Europe, and the tribalism in Europe was all about resources, as
Yes.
it is now. Does that make sense? Whereas on the continent of Africa, we didn't want for resources. They were always there. So our differences was based on whatever it was, but it was nothing to do with any form of genocide and all that type of stuff. So yeah, when people get it wrong about the tribes are the number one, no, it's not. Tribalism is a concept that was introduced into the continent of Africa by Europeans in order to divide and rule.
And you can see, you get a sense of how we used to live when you're traveling and you're really with the, if you like, the uneducated people. So when I lived in Ghana, I used to travel to go and sell things, and we would go by bus. So you travel by bus from Accra all the way to Mali. You're on the road for 5 days, and you're with traders who maybe they went to primary school. It's not university people, it's not college people, it's people who are trading across borders. And I really learnt about how differently we used to live. So, you're on the bus, suddenly you cross the border into Burkina Faso. So you get off and they hear you speaking a different language. Everybody's interested. Where are you from? How many children do you have? Are you married? And then they come with a story that connects you to them. Oh, my uncle went to Ghana. My auntie married an Asante person. Come, come, come. They'll take you to go and meet somebody. Oh, so and so, he went to Ghana once. I thought you should meet them. It's the way we were treated when we traveled by bus. I traveled by bus all the way to Benin from Mali one time. We had to go all the way down through Ghana, through Togo, into Benin. We were going to go to Nigeria. Same story. And it really taught me something about how we were always a curiosity and an inviting through Muslim places.
The loving of culture, the loving of
Yes,
people, and that was
yes,
our biggest downfall.
yeah, totally, totally, totally. I learned so much that to be a stranger didn't mean you were somebody people were scared of. In fact, people
Yeah,
were interested.
Fascinated.
absolutely,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
absolutely.
that's our truth, really. And I think there's an interesting book called The Iceman Inheritance that says that when the Ice Age happened, um, and the Europeans especially being further away from the equator, who were us? Basically, we left Africa, we're walking, we're traveling around. Suddenly, the Ice Age happens. At the same time, you get the world's biggest volcano. We've never had that before. You had fire and ice. So you had darkness and cold. And we're trapped in these caves. No more abundance. Actually, now you've got to fight for everything. And most of the populations that were outside of Africa died off until there was a very small number who emerged out of the Ice Age, and they were pale. They'd lost their
They
color.
adapted.
Yes. And so now this scarcity, a friend of mine described it as the trusting of nature had gone. Suddenly, mankind started making art. Even the act of making art is a trauma response. And then mankind starts farming. But the mankind who are left on the continent, there's a reconnection with nature because nature starts being bountiful again. But the people further away from the continent, suddenly now you better grow your food at the right time and store it
Yeah,
at the right time,
2 month
because
window.
exactly. So now you're looking at, well, so and so over there, they've got no man in the house. It's just some women. I can steal their land. And now you're banding together and having armies and stealing and pillaging. So different mindsets were set up in different places.
Yeah.
And really, what we're living out in a way is coming to the end of the Iceman inheritance, because that greed, that need to possess, to hold on, is so anti-human. We've already touched on it. The birth rate is going down. Anthropologists will tell you the birth rate only goes down when a people are despondent, when they've given up hope, that's when they
or they are genetically inferior, which is what came out of the ice age, because over a period of 10 to 12,000 years they did adapt. Like you said, they lost their pigmentation, right? But then they become a what's the word, not a clone, what's the word I'm looking for? They became an adaptation of the original person,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now they became albino, they became albino, right? And the albinos reproduced with other albinos, and the Africans that did survive and stay there died out. The bones that were found there during the archaeology showed that Africans was with the albinos, but they died out from rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency um, disease, right? And that's what made the Africans that was there died out. So these people emerged as what's now called the white race, and what they do is they reproduce with each other. Now they've reproduced too much. Now this is why they cannot reproduce anymore. And nature, it's funny you should mention nature, because Africans have always derived everything from what they see in nature. Nature shows you, right, that any other animal that's albino doesn't create with another albino animal. So the albino gorilla that they had in Russia, I think it was at that time, refused to mate with any other albino gorilla. It would always mate with the black gorillas, the melanated gorillas. And in every single species, you will see these. Cockroaches will not copulate with albino cockroaches, won't copulate with other albino cockroaches. Snakes, birds, you name it, because there's albino in every single species on the planet. But they always go back to the source, which is the melanated source. And this is why every now and then, in certain royal families on the planet, let's just say this, black is introduced in there just to keep their bloodline going. Does that make sense? Yeah, big up Meghan Markle. Anyway.
And Harry. Okay. See.
Oh no, I've had a discussion the other day, literally about haemophilia and the reason why they had to keep tying themselves back into the vine. So yeah, that's a whole nother discussion.
I mean, I could go on and on about this subject. It's one of my key subjects.
I mean, we're on the topic, so why are we holding back?
No, because sometimes
time.
Because could I just ask everybody, what is everybody's time frame? What time do everyone need to go?
I think just about now.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's Sandra now. These 2 hours. Akua.
I'm cool. This is interesting.
No, what I'm saying is I could go on and on, but nothing can be solved, or even we wouldn't give the topic enough justice with the time that we had left.
Yeah, it'd have to be a separate day for it.
It'd have to be a separate. We'd have to just concentrate on this one thing in one. Does that make sense? Because it digs deep. Trust me, and the deeper it gets, is the more you want to know. So, I would say it wouldn't do it justice if we tried to deal with it even now.
Okay, so are you going to be doing a Zoom within that topic on Black History Studies, or are you just going to come to Now Chat Show and share and just give us,
Well, as you mentioned, Black History Studies, we cover a lot of these topics on our course. So we have an Introduction to Black Studies course that starts every January, and it's a 30-week course. It starts every January, and it's from January till September. And we cover history. The first 12 weeks is history. And then after that, we deal with political science. Then we deal with sociology. Then we deal with psychology, science and technology, art, music, and religion. And we cover those topics extensively. But what we're doing is, even though it's extensive, we're giving you an introduction into it. So so you grasp what's going on. And it's designed to make you want to explore deeper into the topic. So we give you all of the resources or the names of books that you should get and whatever. So these topics, we deal with them all the time. But in terms of presentation, I would love to come back on your platform, obviously, because you guys are all beautiful. How you meet?
Bless you.
Black History, something for Black History Month.
Oh yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, a Black
History Month
History
is every
Month
month
time.
for me.
Yeah.
I don't like.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing post-traumatic slave syndrome. Every single week, every single day, we should be touching and learning.
Yeah, that's
about
Black
history.
History
I don't think
Studies.
it's about
Yeah.
October, and that's what I love about Black History Studies.
Mhm.
But you said it's
365. Yeah.
so you said it's a 30 weeks course. It starts in January. How much
Yeah.
is a course, just in case anybody who's watching or wants to catch on the replay and they want to know a bit more about Black History Studies?
All right. So the course is basically £10,000, right, per person, but it has been discounted right down to £399. Can you see how good we are? Because we understand that not a lot of people could could afford the £10,000, but you're getting more than £10,000 worth of knowledge, but we're going to give it to you for £399. There's different ways to pay. You can pay in full or you can pay in 3 installments, and it's listed on our website now. So www.blackhistorystudies.com. When you get on the landing page, there's a part at the top that shows all what's going on. Just keep scrolling across until you come to beginner's course. Click on that. You'll have all what we cover and all what we do and different ways to pay. So those of you that are interested, you can always go to the website. If you want to speak to me directly, our numbers are on the website as well. So feel free to give us a call.
I've just put the details into the comments for everybody's attention.
Oh, brilliant.
So do check it out.
Fantastic.
I'm looking for a sponsor. I know it's only £400, but boy, I'm just keeping it real right now. I don't have that budget. So if anybody wants to sponsor Kaz from Now Chat Show to go on the Black History Studies, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And so it shall be.
And Akua, as we're on the topic, I know we do have one closing part to cover, but I just want to get yours in there. Just give us a little break before we kind of like end this whole conversation. You've also got an upcoming event as well. There we go. So if you can just elaborate a bit more with regards to this.
Yeah, so we have African spiritual practices coming up. August, the Friday the 26th and Saturday the 27th, so you can still go carnival on Sunday and Monday. And it's really all the practices that I think will really help in one to grow your spiritual practice. So we're going to have meditation, we've got ancestral veneration, we've got talk about psychedelics. We actually have a doggone priest coming to really talk about, really one of our earliest forms of spirituality. We have Leon, who does the Hidden Science series.
Leon Marshall.
He's going to come.
Former student of Black History Studies, by the way.
Fantastic. He's an excellent guy. So he's going to be doing about the hidden science of melanin and spirituality. We've got lots of people. I think we have 11 or 12 speakers and workshop leaders. And we start it all off on the Friday with a cacao ceremony and sound bath, because we just want you to enter, every cell in your body to be vibrating at a higher frequency as you enter these spaces and listen to the speakers. We have a marketplace there, good food made by my sister, and we've also left some big gaps so the community can meet each other and talk and swap experiences. And our saying, or our byline, is Sankofa to eternity, because we know that the truth of who we are and what we are is somewhere behind us, and so we want to go back and fetch it into eternity. The wheel that we've been on is changing, and this is my little contribution towards the ascension of mankind. Really, no small claim.
And can anybody have a stall at the event? Is
yes,
that available?
Yes, we still have. Yes, just you can contact me, Akua. My telephone number is 07 389 136 084. If you would like a stall, or you can write to us. And yeah, there's a few store places left, and you can come along. Yeah, it's really, it's an amazing event. We're getting a lot of good feedback, and it's something that I intend to carry on doing. The ancestors have asked for it, have willed it, and are making it happen. So I'm doing my best to bring it to everyone.
Amazing. So what I'll do, guys, I will share the link so that you can buy your ticket. I believe the tickets are £25. Is that correct?
Yes, they're going to go up. I should have actually turned up the going up part, but I haven't had a chance to turn the tickets up, so they're still at a discount. Tomorrow morning, though, I must put them up. A weekend pass will be £40, and a day pass will be 25. But right now, a weekend pass is still 25. So, you know, it's getting there fast, totally.
That's
Yeah.
Amazing.
Heads up. That's nice of you. People, you better get in there now.
Yeah, get in there now. So buy your ticket whilst you're on the live. That you can do. Just click into the comment, buy your £25 ticket. Okay, so as we're going to wrap up now, and I just think this will kind of end the show nicely, the impact of PTSS on our mental health. LP put a comment up. The challenge from my point of view is to heal the parents and our elders first. Then there is a natural transfer of knowledge to our children. Does anybody want to jump onto
that is a perfect point, because whilst we have children's programs at Black History Studies, my wife teaches children's programs Sunday. We do them in 6-week periods, so we do 6 weeks on, a couple weeks off, and she teaches the history and the Black studies to children. We think it is important that we focus on the adult education, because the reason why we say that is because you can have the children for 2 hours a week, and then for the other 145 hours of that week, the children are at home with their mum and dad dancing to Shabba Ranks on the table, and it just undoes all of the work that you've done in that week. So it's to get the mindset of the adults in a place where it goes back to how it used to be on the continent, where the elders are respected and the elders' knowledge is passed down through the generations, and that's the way it's supposed to be, for me anyway.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I support other parents like myself who really have gone through challenging times, and you must sort yourself out first. And you know, sometimes when I'm speaking to parents, it can be really difficult because they're constantly trying to tell me about little Johnny who's got the problem, and I have to keep going, yeah, but you. And keep bringing it back and bringing it back.
Where did Johnny get it from?
Exactly.
Well, it's not even where did Johnny get it from, because it's really kind of like, to be the person who can support this child, whatever it is they're going through, you have to change.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Who you were when they got into that situation. And the reason why I disagreed with you, Mark, is like in my case, my son got involved in county lines drug dealing. There were no drug dealers in the house.
No.
But I had to be a different parent to be able to get him out, because the parent I was, who was, you know, middle-class Ghanaian, kind of like, you know, the worst thing that happens is somebody smoking on the balcony, smoking a cigarette on the balcony. That wasn't the parent who could deal with
what happened. Yeah, absolutely.
But
the fact of the matter is, you recognize that and you did the change in order to make it happen. Some people don't recognize it. They don't take ownership, and they want to be pointing all the fingers. But they'd be pointing the fingers this way, not realizing there's 3 fingers pointing back at them.
Absolutely. But the thing is shame.
Shame is
such a big
really
thing.
at the core of it.
Shame is at the core of it. And
shame and
until you break shame, people will be stuffing all manner of things under the bed, not because they don't care, but the shame is like a boulder that they cannot get out from behind.
And to add to your point there, a child is often embodying the brokenness of the system. So it's very systemic. I have worked with children and families in Hackney. So, you know, where you turn up to work and one of your children's been involved in gun crime. But it's a system. It's system, you know, within the family, it's systems within that community. So you have to have a systemic approach to whether you're dealing with racism, whether you're dealing with, you know, child rearing and raising your children. So it is quite critical to think about it in terms of systems as well.
Yeah, it is systematic. Absolutely. Absolutely. I say it's systematic for one reason. When little Tommy kills little Scott, it's two children that had a dispute and one ended up dead. When Leroy deals with Byron, it's black on black crime. Does that make sense? So all of these things all of these narratives are put into the space in order to what's the word I'm looking for? In order to justify the system that's in place to deal with it. Does that make sense? But it deals with one set of people one way and one set of people the other way. So,
and may I kindly just jump in so I can say goodbye, just to directly answer Kaz's question on impact of PTSS on our mental health. Very much similar to PTSD, not different at all, apart from the fact that it's, you know, obviously associated with racism. So you are looking at similar presentation, you're looking at, you know, avoiding certain places, situations that actually remind you of that which you embody. Then it then affects your mental health in terms of difficulty in concentrating, focusing, reaching your potential emotionally. Sometimes people are just very, very sensitive, and then they say you're an aggressive XYZ, but it's all coming from what you've absorbed. So it's very much, you know, the same symptoms with PTSD. And then you've got the schemas that have developed, which you know, easily subjugate and not challenge. You self-sacrifice in many a times. You have a constant what we call vulnerability to harm schema. So there is that sense, I'm Black and I am vulnerable. That's ingrained in you because of what you've absorbed over the years. And so I just wanted to kind of share that before I go off, to say very much what you find with PTSD. And it's thinking about healing, looking, I think Brittany, it would have been lovely to have her now, because she would have probably shared about the window of tolerance, getting into that space of regulation. And so you're looking at all methods, I think, as Akua was talking about her workshops, that is, you know, feeding into, you know, what we would call stabilization, bringing in that balance of, you know, your thinking processes and how you, I mean, simple breathing exercises, just really grounding yourself. So it can be anything from just simple grounding or exposure to boardrooms. Many people can't even, you know, face entering certain spaces and spheres. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in before I say goodbye.
Yeah. Well said, my sister. There is no difference. So should I say the only difference between post-traumatic slave syndrome and post-traumatic stress disorder is racism.
Yeah.
Because one is recognized and one is not. But if they recognize both, then they have to deal with both. And then if they have to deal with both, they are part of that problem in the first place, which means it's an admittance, and then all things will come from it. So
that's correct.
Which they're not going to do.
But people need to, you know, it's doing that work on the inside to unpack some of the things that we can believe. I have a shop, we're doing a pop-up shop, and it was quite sad in a way. I had two people say the same thing. So people didn't know this makeup of this new shop. They know my old shop, Hub and Culture, which was a Black cooperative. And first person said to me, yeah, it's really good, sis. Yeah, I'd think about it. But the problem is, I think we're going to need a white face. You know, people don't want to buy from us. We're going to need a white face. So that person didn't join. And then another person who did join, same story. And he was so convinced. And I became belligerent that he was so convinced that we couldn't sell without a white face that I deliberately didn't tell him that there was going to be white people selling in there, because I just was in a funk about it, and I was arguing with him. Of course we can. We've all been selling for all these years, blah, 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 blah. And when
sorry, Akua, just one moment. Sandra's got to go.
Oh, sorry, Sandra.
Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Good night. It was lovely to hear you. Okay,
and thank you, Sandra. Look what I'm wearing.
Good night.
Okay, thank you, sis.
I'm gonna have to run in a minute as well, but yeah, let's keep going.
I'll be really quick. And the sad thing was, so the second one stayed. He came in, he saw there were white people selling there, so he felt comfortable to stay. But the problem didn't go away. That a fundamental issue that he had, the story carried on, and in the end he's not with us, and it's so kind of sad because he was so wedded to this story about his own lack. And it wasn't even true. He made more money than all of us. People were buying from him like that, but he was wedded to a story. And it just was another point of really showing this thing of, you kind of you have to almost question everything you think you believe, just to make sure that what you believe is actually based on some kind of fact. And it was really sad. We said bye to him last week, and we're all happy to say bye to him. But there was still a part of me that was just sad for him that he didn't see the reality of what was happening in front of his eyes, because he's wedded to a story of, I am in lack because I'm a black man. And that's called bad.
Dr. Amos Wilson calls that pathological normalcy.
Yeah.
Is when the pathology overtakes the normal life.
Yeah.
So when you, as the normal person now, turns around and says to me, Kaz and Miss T, that this, that, and that, we're all going to look at you and laugh and say, you're crazy. Actually, we are the crazy free, but because we've bought into the pathology and it's all been normalized, because the majority normalize the pathology, you become the crazy one. And yeah, that's what the sad thing is about it, to be honest, sis. Yeah. I see where you're coming from with that. Yeah, he's bought into that story. Yeah. Black history studies, back in the day, before social media was blown up, we used to do flyers, and we used to go out and use flyers to promote our courses. And if I had 50 pence for the amount of times that people turned down the flyer, I'll tell you why they turned it down in a minute, right? But if I had 50 pence from the amount of times that people turned down this flyer, I could be doing this Zoom from anywhere in the world now. We would hand them the flyer and they would go, nah, it's all right. I said, why not? I know enough about slavery. It doesn't say anything on the flyer about we'll be teaching slavery and all of the rest of it. But because their mindset has been coached to think that way.
Yeah, it's a programming, isn't it?
Yeah, the program. Yeah, I'm getting tired now. I said coach, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Because their mindset has been programmed to think that way, it's the first thing that comes to their mind.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing that Sister Akua was going on with, getting from the brother in the shop. It's not good. So, yeah.
Okay, well, this is it. I think on that note, we are going to now for real wrap up. So guys, do make sure you do check out Black History Studies. Do make sure you check out African Spirituality Practices, which is going to be held on the 26th and the 27th. All the information will be in the description, just in case you are catching a replay. Make sure, guys, if you want to go down there and you want that £25 ticket, make sure you buy a ticket tonight, because Akua said it's going up tomorrow. So, and heads up, and make sure you share the link. And please, whatever you do, please do share. Make sure you have subscribed to our YouTube channel, and do leave a comment after the show. I know some of you have been interacting, leaving comments throughout the show, and that's been great. Thank you so much. But please do leave a comment, because it also helps with the algorithm, I believe it is.
That's correct.
Yeah, so do make sure you comment, make sure you share. You know, content like this is not always shared, it's always across the pond that is shared, but within the UK, we don't seem to do that unless it's like a celebrity sharing this information. And, you know, it is important for all and every single one of us that is tuned in today. So on that note, I think we're going to say bye. And I'm going to
can I say one thing, sis?
Of course.
Can you finish with the song I sent you for all
I'm
of
going to do that. Let me just do my Let me do my... Culture Mark, I know you're a presenter on Colourful Radio. Let me do my thing, man.
Big up the Colourful Massive. Big up Sister Iola. Her show is always off the hook. Anytime I can get a chance to listen in, I always do. So big up Sister Iola on Colourful. And my Colourful Radio show is every Monday from 10 till midnight. It's the Message in the Music show. We don't play foolish music. It's all about messages.
He's doing his own advert, Kaz. I love it.
Right. None of that's going to be played. Is that what you're telling me?
Which one?
Oh, nothing. Maybe I should.
No, I don't even know that tune.
All right. On that note, so I See You by Culture Mark. All right. Peace out, everyone. Laters.
I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. I have studied your history for so long, and compared to my history, your history's just wrong. Every book, every gallery, every museum, pure battle, pure war, pure guns, pure bomb. There's nothing in your history that says creation. Everything in your history, it says destruction. Everywhere that you go, I just war you. The pan is like, without evil, you can't function. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. In a short space of time, you kill enough million. Menticide, genocide, pure annihilation. Population control is just a part of your plan. And some examples I have will prove that you are demon. Like what? World War II and World War I. In a World War II, you drop two nuclear bomb. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, where they in Japan. Them strike alone, you murder about 500,000. And what about the enslavement of the African? From then until now, a pure separation. We eyes them open. We see your dirty plan and we don't need no glasses. A 2020 vision. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. You want to decrease the population control, your number one mission. You are minority and that's without question. That's why you don't think twice when you take out a nation. Look what you do to the original Australian, and look what you do to the original Tasmanian. Look what you do to the Native American, and look what you do to the so-called Caribbean. They scramble for Africa, Lord what a bam bam. And ever since then, colonization. And ever since then, war and destruction. And ever since then, have your corruption. And then you brainwash with your education. And decimate with your vaccination. And sterilize with your contraception. And genocide with your starvation. No, we cannot unite up your separation. You divide and rule with the tribalism. This is my wake-up call to all African. Minister Farrakhan said, now is the time and what must be done. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder is where you come from. I have studied your history for so long, and compared to my history, your history is just wrong. Every book, every gallery, every museum, pure battle, pure war, pure guns, pure bomb. There's nothing in your history that says creation. Everything in your history, it says destruction. Everywhere that you go, I just war. You depend is like, without evil you can't function. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man. Me have to wonder if you are human. I see you, dirty Babylon. 100% I have you in my vision. I see you, Mr. Wicked Man.